Hey guys, welcome back to another video. I want to just talk about basically story time, a little bit about my story and how I got to where I am today. I'm going to try to make this not too quick. If you're new to this channel is dedicated to helping people get through toxic relationships and divorces, navigating family court with toxic individuals, especially when you have kids involved. If that sounds like something that would help you get your life back, please consider subscribing to the channel, ring the bell notification so that YouTube will tell you what's going on. And let's jump into this. One of the things that comes up often in my situation is, I've gotten to this point, so maybe my story's different than yours, or maybe I didn't have it as bad. Maybe I didn't dwell on things as long as potentially you have. And the reality of this is every one of our stories, no matter what the specific details are, is incredibly painful, and it typically takes a significant amount of time to heal. And that is the fundamental truth on recovering from toxic narcissistic relationships and emotionally abusive relationships. Because of the way they play out, it is really tough to wrap your head around. Okay, so, maybe you're new at this and you're not really sure what that means. It took me about 3 years to really start to make some headway on this. If you've been a viewer of this channel for a while, you often hear about me talk about my dark days. And those are the days that I'm talking about on that. It's like post-separation, midst of divorce, before it turned into a divorce, all the way up past the divorce, and in the process of attempting to, co-parent. I thought I could co-parent. And that was a very, very troubling time. I was trapped with a lot of the same emotions that a lot of you guys have. You may be able to relate exactly with what I'm talking about. In last night's live stream, I was talking a little bit about this and how it was difficult for me to get over the anger and the bitterness and the frustration and just the tremendous amount of loss and grief that I had over this situation, where I didn't think it would be possible to ever recover. Now, keep in mind, I'm 8 years into this now. I mean, that's 8 years that I've been working on this, and the first half of this was a freaking emotional nightmare. It was probably one of the worst experiences I've ever had. Now, granted, I look back on it and it wasn't as bad as some situations. My situation could have been a lot worse, but we all feel the same way. Part of the problem is whenever we get stuck in that mode, we can make mistakes out of fear and anxiety to where we almost make our worst reality happen. That was really close for me as an outcome. And I think the only reason that I was really able to succeed in that is I, in my professional career, dealt with, or I continue to still do it, but more in the past, with toxic people. Now I realize that I was surrounded by toxic, narcissistic, evil, piece of crap human beings for the majority of my life. The one good part about this is when it came to the divorce is I was able to recognize those same traits in my ex, or soon-to-be ex, with what those other people were doing. So I was able to use some of the skills I use professionally to deal with toxic people, to identify when they're trying to push your buttons, to realize when you're basically being baited to try to respond a certain way. That made it, I wouldn't say it made it easier, but I had a fundamental understanding of what was going on, so I was able to combat it. Okay, so maybe that's something a little different than your situation. Had I not had that, I in looking at everything in total, I would have strongly expected that I would have made some serious mistakes, that custody would have been very difficult for me to get 50-50, and this whole situation would have been different. Now, that doesn't mean that I still couldn't have ended up in this same space. I honestly believe that had I, as long as I could make it through those dark days, that I could have gotten to where I am today. And I think that means, in my mind, that means that you can get there too. The first part about this is just being able to recognize what's going on so you understand it, so you know how, well, not necessarily that you know how to deal with it, but you at least understand the reality of what you're dealing with. Because until you have that, you're kind of lost and you don't really understand completely what's going on, and it doesn't make sense to you. Okay, so again, getting back into this, I was stuck in that for a really long time. Now, in the midst of that, I was doing therapy. I got to the point at the really bad time of this, I was going to a therapist once a week, and that didn't seem to be helping. I was trying to read things. It seemed like my life was spiraling. Well, it didn't seem like it was. It was spiraling out of control. I felt that there was no hope. I felt that I wouldn't be able to get out of these recurring thoughts and feelings and emotions that I was having. I felt that I had been crushed by my ex, that there was no escape, that I was going to be under the emotional thumb of this situation for the rest of my life, and that there was no recovery. And that anybody who's in that mode knows that is a very dangerous place to be. It is a very scary place to be, it is a very isolating place to be, and it's real easy to lose all hope on everything. And I was at that point. That was where I was. And then towards the midst of that, or towards the end of that dark cycle, my therapist had introduced the idea or the concept that potentially I might be dealing with an undiagnosed NPD. I thought that was a load of crap when I first heard it, until I went home and started doing the Google on it, and my mind was blown. Now, here's the other thing that's really unfortunate but real about this is, even though the veil had started to be lifted on my eyes and I started to be able to see things a little clearly, I still was struggling a lot. It was still really tough. I was still going to therapy once a week. I did have a high at one point, because I finally felt like I had some closure, and I felt like I had some answers. And then everything came crashing back down. I started second guessing myself. Yes, I had answers, but it still didn't make a lot of sense. And I think that's a very common thing that people go through, even when they find this information out. The reason I'm saying this, and the reason I really want to hit this point, is because even when once you finally find your first video, your first information, or your first aha moment, it doesn't mean that everything is going to be peachy keen right after that. There's still going to be more work to do. I know that sucks, but it's part of the process. And I want to mention this because, and I haven't talked about this in a while, is when you get caught in that mode and you have that initial high where you feel like you're doing better, and then you crash back down, you can feel like, oh my God, I'm going to be trapped here forever. Oh my God, I'm different than everyone else. I'm different than all the other people out there on YouTube or who are writing blogs or books, and they're different because they were able to get through it, but I won't be able to get through it. Again, I felt the same way. And I can't guarantee you, but I know from some of the other YouTubers that I've talked to on this, they've felt the same way. I think oftentimes it's not a topic that is hit that much or revisited, but I think it's important every once in a while to do that, because I think it's so easy for somebody to fall into that trap. I had someone I was talking with the other day who was, well, your situation's easier because of this, this, and this. And it's like, well, okay, there's more going on there, but I think it's easy to look at another person's story, and if you can find enough differences in it, you could think, oh, well, they made it because. But there was a period of time where I felt the same way. I would look at someone, I'm like, well, they made it because they didn't have the financial aspects of it, or they got to see their kids full time. They were abandoned by their narcissistic ex, and they just went off and had a new family and just left them alone. So their situation's different because I'm not, I'm having to deal with it constantly. I had a friend of mine from high school who had a horrific situation. He is like, the worst case scenario, divorced, many years ago, 20 years ago, shortly after high school. Kids, initially were with mom. His career got destroyed. He was in the Coast Guard. He got kicked out of the Coast Guard because of some altercations that happened. Ex was playing dirty and evil. He had to fight for 3 years to ultimately get 50-50 custody of his kids. And as soon as that happened, she took the kids and ditched the state, and he never saw them again. And it even got worse, because later in life, whenever his ex got divorced again and needed money, she went back for child support on everybody and threw his name under the bus and saying, well, he didn't pay for 17 years, so go after him, or 15 years. And they did. right? He had no idea where his kids were. He had no idea where to send the money or anything like that. Never went back to court because he didn't know he needed to. And now he's, 15 years in arrears and being hammered by child support services to pay back money on kids he never even got to know. And they still wouldn't even let him know where the kids were. My point is that I heard that story and I was like devastated. I'm like, oh my God, that's horrible. That's the worst case story. He heard my story and he's like, oh my God, your story is worse than mine. Because in his mind, he didn't have to deal with, he lost his kids, but he didn't have to deal with the constant daily interactions that I was dealing with. A lot of this falls in perspective. A lot of this is perspective and how we look at it. All of this is hard. All of this is really difficult. The message I want to get across is it may seem insurmountable, that it may seem that there is no way that you are ever going to be on the other side of this. And that's exactly the way I felt. I did not think that I would ever be able to get to the other side of this. I thought at the best case scenario, I would have that reoccurring pain for the rest of my life with no way to escape it, like a chronic injury, right? You blow your back out or you do something or you lose a limb or something, and there's a constant reminder of it. You can move on with your life and you can try to rebuild and you can try to, salvage what's left, but that you'd always have that pain. That's the way I felt. That's the way I thought. I thought that was what it was going to be. I thought it would always be my dark companion with me, following me around, and I would just have to fight it. I'm telling you, it doesn't stay that way. You get to the point where you start healing from this, you start making your peace with it, and you effectively let it go. Not like the way people are telling you, oh, let it go, just let it go and move on with your life. You literally get to the point where you've spent so much energy on it that you don't have anything left to give to it, and you finally come to the realization, your emotional rock bottom, if you will, that it's not helping you, that it's not going to do anything positive to your life. Now, you can stay stuck in that mode for a really long time. I think 3 to 4 years is a really long time. But if you don't do anything, if you stay in that mode, you can stay stuck in that mode for decades. And I do not want that for any one of you. I want you guys to be able to recognize the reality of what's happening, which I know you do because you're living it, but to be able to get your life back. That's the key of this channel. And there's a lot of people who have commented on other videos that says exactly what's happened, that they have gotten to that other side. Now, a lot of those people don't stick around. Once they heal and they're getting their life back, constantly reminding themselves of this stuff isn't really what they want to do. Some people come back every once in a while because something will come back and slam them and remind them that they need some more work to do. But my point is that the way you're feeling today, if you're feeling completely emotionally drained and devastated, that does not mean that is going to be your forever. Okay, so on that, if you need some more help with this and maybe I could one-on-one talk with you, that would be helpful. Sign up for some coaching. You can do that at dadsfromedivorce.com/coaching. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you know somebody who could use this message, please share it with them. And I will chat with you on the next video. Take care. Bye.